And welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. We are recording live from Austin, Texas, and I have with me in the studio today none other than Pastor Muhammad Ali. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. And also, we have back, it feels like it's been way too long,
It's been a really long time.
Mrs. Catie Sas. We are so glad that you're here.
Me too.
Okay, so we're going to do a recap of Sunday's talk, which was on the blessing, and which makes me think of the Carrie Job song. But beyond that, there's actually a blessing that the Lord has for us, which he first gives to Jesus in Matthew 3. And that's where the Lord speaks over Jesus in his baptism. He said, "This is my son whom I love, with him I'm well pleased." And that is a powerful message. And I think when I first read that, I was like, that's nice. It's like, of course, God would say that about his kid. And I think it's Matthew 17, Mount Transfiguration, where then the Father speaks that over Jesus again when Peter starts mumbling about building booths and tabernacles whenever Jesus is transfigured. And he goes, "This is my son whom I love. Listen to him." So, which is nice, and you might say, well, that's nice to emulate that, but it's actually more powerful than that, because John 17 says that Jesus is praying, and he prays to God, "I pray that you would love them," and he's talking about those who would believe in me through the word of the apostles. You would love them, meaning me, meaning Mo, meaning Catie, even or equal to the way that the Father loves him. And that is sort of mind-blowing to think about. And I think one of the things that I've talked about is like how powerful the words of parents are. Mm-hmm. And so you take the words of parents, like, because, there's the kid in high school, at the lunch table, he says something really mean. Did you ever have anybody say anything mean to you in high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And anything come to mind?
Well, these girls started a rumor about my parents.
Oh, gosh.
And, there were some choice words, so I don't think they're appropriate.
Sure.
But yeah, long story short, they started a rumor about my parents and how my mom cheated on my dad and, oh gosh. And some really choice words about my mom. And, so then that went on for a while and I moved schools.
Oh, wow.
Because of the rumor?
Because everyone was so rude to me for a good while.
Wow. Okay. So that was powerful. But would you say that the weight of your parents' words have more weight than that, or did that have more weight?
That had more weight. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Of my peers.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. Okay. Because usually I think of, and this might be.
I think if you respect your parents and you feel deeply known and loved by your parents, then it does have more weight. But,
okay, that makes sense. Wow. That is, man. That's a beating. I'm sorry that happened in your life. You literally had to change schools over the weight of someone's words.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very small thing, honestly. It's not really that big compared to other things.
You changed schools. It couldn't have been small.
Yeah. There were some other things mixed in there, but, it's fine.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure fully where that is, but I appreciate you sharing that. So let's talk about, just for you then, like what we talked about, like if God loves us, then there's a actual, and I'm using the word physical because I probably am not using the right word, but when there's a physical blessing, that doesn't even make sense. When there is like
well, how do you even bless someone? Is there a script, you think, or what are you even?
Okay, let's just talk about. You were telling me this before we went recording
with Robert.
Yeah. Tell me about what happened.
Well,
was this this week?
Yeah, this was Sunday. So him and Deb came over for the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
And so it was after your sermon, obviously, and he comes over and he's like, I just want to let you know how much I love you and how much I care about you.
Was this like you're sitting in a chair watching the game? What were you doing?
I think this is your favorite part of the story. So I was washing dishes, and he's in the kitchen. He's kind of behind me at the other counter, and he's prepping stuff. And then kind of out of nowhere, he starts, this is just his MO. He just will randomly start talking to you about childhood stuff or what might be on your heart. And we'll just pick up this deep conversation out of nowhere, which I love. I have always loved that about him. And he is like, I don't know that I've ever blessed you before? Has your dad or were your parents ever like this? Do you feel like you were ever blessed by your parents? And I was like, I don't think so. And it's like some formal thing. I don't think I've ever experienced that. And he goes, well, I just want to bless you. And he like, I'm washing dishes, so I have like soapy utensils in my hand, but he walks over and he just wraps his arms around me, and I'm literally, but like I love like fatherly physical affection so much, and so like I didn't even care that it was this awkward, like I'm holding dishes right now, but like I just love that you're like hugging me. And so he's like, I love you, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm proud to call you my daughter-in-law, and I just want you to know that I want to bless you, and I don't remember like the rest of it, but
yeah, that's
it was just really sweet, and I was like, I was not expecting this, but I really needed it, and
Talk to me about why you needed it, because I think I have a speculation, or I have a theory that everybody needs that, and the reason why I'd say that is because if God blessed Jesus in that way, well then then he says that we're loved like that by the Father. There's a definite need that we have.
It's the impact that a father has on their children. Like, I know that moms are great. I mean, I'm a mom, but like the impact and the relationship between Ryan and Ava will always be more vital and more significant than my relationship with her. But not that I'm less significant, but there's something about the relationship between a father and his child.
Wow.
That's just powerful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, I think Adrienne says the same thing, because she'll say, this would be like when I'm like, I got at this meeting, or I got this thing. She's like, yeah, but you're their father and they need you. And I can't be, and that just, there's moments where I'm like, oh yeah, that's like my role. Obviously church things are important. Ministering to people is a big deal, but they need me. And a mother is awesome, and this is probably where people might get a little bit offended. And I don't think the intention is to offend. You don't feel offended when I say this. And Adrienne like calls me to this, which I appreciate, that she's very much a lead our family. Don't be a passive.
It's a high role.
Anyway, so like you have not only the authority, the role, the power of your words to bless and then to bring something really special to our family. Don't miss that. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I know that seems like a ridiculous thing that I have to be reminded of that, but our culture just says, it doesn't matter, father, mother, whatever, just interchangeable.
No,
in fact, there's this new term called complementarity, not complementarianism, which is like husband and wife complement each other, where the roles are interchangeable, just don't overlap them. And so that obviously is not right. But I feel like that is a real calling on my life. And the more that I sort of recognize that, and this, I know I'm a pastor, and so therefore the culture shouldn't affect me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I do feel like there's been a part of that has affected me to say, like, yeah, Adrienne, I'm delegating, family things to you. I'll do work things. Boom. And I can't fully like remove myself from the role of pastoring my kids and being a part of that blessing of their lives. And so for me, that's been a real powerful part of my life, of being home, being aware, especially in the mornings as starting their day, to send them out with a blessing, which is sort of an interesting, this Deuteronomy 6:4, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then when Moses sort of reveals that, it says, you want to talk about this on the road, on the way wherever you're going, at home, at bedtime, as you're doing all things. And so there's a continual thing of reality of like loving God and then passing that blessing on to your children. Okay.
Well, there are also informal ways there's a formal and then more of it.
And I think maybe I'm interchanging those. That's a good point.
Well, I'm thinking about ways that you can bless your children that don't have to have this like script or formalness to them, like the daddy-daughter dance.
Oh, yeah. Talk to us about the daddy-daughter dance, because you got to take photos.
There were a handful of times where I just kept trying to not tear up.
Oh,
like
it was powerful.
It was just so like dads. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know that men understand the impact that they have on their daughters, and I'm probably gonna start crying.
No, tell
but it
tell
was
us about what you mean.
it was so meaningful to me, and it was very healing for me too.
Why is that? Tell me. I don't get that.
Because I wanted that,
Yeah.
and that I don't think that you know how important it is for your daughter to know that she is so precious to you. And so I'm watching these little girls dance with their dads, and it's just so sweet. And I just keep thinking, like, these girls are so blessed by this.
Yeah.
Like, they are so blessed by this night and getting this undivided attention from their dad. And it's not like, don't take it lightly. This is so important, because you are the man that she is going to see and that will help her find her husband.
Right.
You have such a great influence in her life, and your voice, your presence almost builds her self-esteem.
Right.
And so that's why it's so important. And that's why, I mean, as a wedding photographer, every single father-daughter dance, I cry. Every single one. I'm like behind my camera and my eyes are watering, and I'm like, oh my gosh, pull it together. Like, you've got to be able to see what you're photographing.
Oh my gosh.
But it's just it's so sweet and so healing for me every time.
Wow. Well, that's powerful, Katie. Thanks for sharing that. Mo, talk to me about just your dad, like where, talk to us about maybe the blessing that you sort of missed or was like sucked away. I mean, he's not a follower of Jesus, but where did you get a father's blessing, or did you?
Yeah, it was. I technically, so Arab culture is pretty big on father's blessing.
Yeah.
Like really, really big. There's a whole ceremony.
This is where we probably need to borrow some of that.
Well, so part of the ceremony is tied in with the religious ritual that they have of, I forget which Old Testament thing it is. Oh, it's the Passover.
Yeah.
But their version of the Passover, where they actually have to go grab a goat or a sheep or whatever. And it's so funny watching like rich bougie people do this like traditional thing. It looks weird because you have this like goat in your.
They just have livestock randomly?
Well, they don't.
You have to go buy it?
You have to go buy it, and they bring it in, and they have to kill it themselves. It's part of the thing. So
what do you wear?
They wear, I don't know. I just
Bougie
remember
things?
I don't remember, dude. I just remember watching like my dad slice a goat's throat, and then they put their hand on the blood, and then they like post a mark on their front gate or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I know. So it's crazy. So with the father's blessing, it's supposed to be part of that ritual whenever it is that you receive it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
did your dad do that
No,
for you?
he did not do that for me. I was supposed to get that when I thought I was going to go live in Jordan, but I never got it because I didn't want to be Muslim, and I came back here. Yeah. So I never got the blessing. You can't get a blessing if you're not Muslim.
Right.
Yeah. So you won't get it.
So, okay, so have you personally, has there been someone that said like, I now bless you?
Kind of, man. I was leading worship at a church in Northern California, and there was a guy, and I had this like cheap little guitar, all that I could afford. And this dude, like father figure to me, and he was like, you know what, man? I've been thinking about selling my Gibson. It's like this $5,000 guitar, but I really want to bless you with it.
Wow.
And because I feel like this is going to be part of your ministry and all this stuff. So I remember like getting that guitar from him, and so to me that felt like, God, you're looking after me,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I think I have my dad, great guy, but not fully following Jesus. And he would always make promises to me like, one day I'm going to give you millions of dollars. I think he in his heart, he really believed he was going to do that. I don't think he was lying. I just think in his head, he was going to make it, whatever that means. And so he died about 10 years ago and wasn't ever able to do that, but he was so for my ministry, so for everything I was doing. He blessed me in every possible way to kind of, like my first book came out because my dad helped me self-publish it. And I was in Iraq and he got it self-published for me. I one day hand it to Andy Stanley. Andy Stanley then hands it to Multnomah Publishing. Bam, next thing you know, I'm published by Random House. It's a wild story, but like those sort of things, like where my dad came through, and now that he is sort of gone, but in more even spiritual, I've had people like, a person that's really been involved in our lives, in my life personally, has blessed me over and over again by giving us a $2 million piece of property. Then I had somebody else just kind of bless our church by, with all the things that my dad wanted to do. God has provided men that like have a spiritual background that not only bless financially, like to, hey, I believe in your ministry, go.
Yeah.
But also just love me and just say the encouraging things like, I am so proud of your ministry and blah, blah, all that. Like, you're just like, man, I need to hear that because it's in me that I want to hear a man of God and a fatherly figure come to me and say, I believe in you. I'm going to put a lot of resource behind you because I see that you are following the Lord and I want to continue. I want to see that blossom. And I think, again, I think there's a lot, like early on when Adrian and I were, we got married, and I knew as soon as I got married, I wanted to be a pastor because being a single person and being a pastor for me was not in the cards because that was a lot of growing up to do. Anyway, so I knew that as soon as, and so anyway, we were looking for a place to, we were like, had our resume out there, and I just got married. I was 34. I'm like, all right, God, where are you going to send me? And I didn't have any like networks or connections because I didn't have family in ministry. It was just like, I'm just figuring it out. But it was Adrian's dad who was connected down here, and so that's kind of how we found out about Wells Branch Community Church, because Hill Country Bible Church, where her father was an elder, Hill Country planted Pflugerville, then Hill Country Pflugerville planted Wells Branch Community Church, and so we knew of that. So the place that I naturally had connections was through Adrian's father. So in the same way, and he put his blessing on me when I married his daughter, and he was always for me, which I really, really appreciated Curtis in that. He has always been really, really for me. And so that whole process, I needed, in a sense, his blessing came to really be a true awesome thing for me, because he didn't like go like nepotistically, because that wasn't his role, because the autonomous churches. But it was just a really huge blessing for him to kind of back me. Yeah.
Did Curtis kind of fill some gaps that maybe your dad didn't?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like Curtis is more emotional. Like my dad, we could only talk about sports or the mechanics of ministry. You couldn't really talk about like
the heart behind it.
Yeah, like I'm really dealing with some things. My dad would send me, like nude pics. Like that's kind of my dad. I'd be like, Dad, no, I remember I'm in ministry. Like that's not, he'd be like, Mama, here's a funny one. Like that. And you're just like, Dad. Anyway, so I kind of felt like I was the mature one trying to, but my dad was like the fun friend that was like, he's down for whatever road trip you want to go on. He was up for whatever. And so that's why I kind of love I really do love my dad, because he was up for literally whatever. It's just like when I went to him and I was like, hey, Dad, like, talk to me about like, a woman that I should be for. He'd be like, I don't know. I was like, okay. I just felt like, I guess I'm going to have to figure that all on my own. I think that's where it was like, and hence why I need to mature in that area a ton. I think I'm a ton like my dad. And I think my dad I was reading when he died, I got to read some of his like college papers when he was in college, because he wanted to be a pastor. Like that was like a thing.
Oh, wow.
It was wild. And then like he, instead of going down a theology degree, he got a philosophy degree somehow. Somehow that flipped or switched. Anyway. And I think he really missed out on having a father. The paper that I read was like how he missed out on having a dad, because he didn't have a father. And he talked about like, I guess it's fine. I've never known what it's like to have a dad, so I don't know if there's anything I'm missing out on. And I'm like, oh man, even though my dad wasn't like super amazing, like in spiritually, he was super amazing in other ways, like in like the amount of time he would spend with me playing basketball, and the amount of time he would spend time with me playing football or baseball or coaching my leagues, or just always being there in those early years. And then I think, at some point hit the midlife crisis, and then in my teenage years, he just sort of was gone a lot. And I think that a lot of men face that because they don't realize the impact that a father can have on their son. I remember having a hard day at school, and I wanted to talk to my dad. I was 13 years old, and I was riding the bus home, and I go, oh, my dad's not home. And I remember saying this, Jesus is going to be my dad. It was like a weird, like, I was 8 when I received Christ, and so I said, Jesus is going to be my dad. And that was the way I viewed it. And I had zero discipleship, nobody sort of pouring in. Everyone always assumed I had it together, and I presented myself as someone who always had it together. But man, I would have really loved a guy like Robert just come around me, give me a hug, say, I just bless you, and all that. So, and I think probably people tried. I don't know if I could have received it, honestly. Like, there, you know how like you're just, sometimes you don't have ears to hear, and you don't, I don't know if I would have received it well.
You might think it's awkward.
Yeah, I would have been like, I don't know. And maybe people tried, and I wasn't at that spot. But all that to say, the Father's blessing becomes so powerful, and that's why the 3 phrases of this is my son whom I love, with him I'm well pleased. I've sort of recouched that, and I wish I could say I made it up. I think I heard some pastor 20 years ago say it. But I love you, I'm proud of you, and your mind has just been on my heart, on my mind. I say it to my sons every day at least 50 times. And I know that seems like an exaggeration, but if you get around me, I tend to gush a little bit, so I probably need to work on that. But I just
gush over your son.
Yeah, I love you. I'm proud
Keep
of you. You're
doing
mine.
it.
And so one of the things that I always have to remind is like, I'm proud of you, not because you did X, Y, or Z. I'm proud of you because you're my son. Yeah. And I think that has been an important thing to communicate, because there's a tendency to kind of be proud of someone for their achievements, and so I always have to go, hey, I'm so proud. Like Jet. He was excited. The fact that Jet was excited for me just really moves my heart. He was at school yesterday, and he goes, "My daddy's church just got the money to go forward to get to build the church," and he's like, "And we got hundreds of thousands of dollars," and Adrian was actually in the class because it was Valentine's Day party and then you're just like, and Adrian's like, we don't need to talk about how much the number, because it comes off like, there's a church with all this money, and it sounded weird, and they don't, I mean, if they would see our church, they'd be like, oh, well, that makes sense. But the fact he was so proud, and then he's like, he introduces Adrian to this girl in his class, and he says, she's gonna come to church. Well, and Adrian actually texted her parents, and so I'm hoping Jane and her parents are going to come to church next Sunday, whatever. It was just really awesome, and he was so proud of his dad. I was just really encouraged. I said, hey, way to go, Jet, on being bold about how much you love God and your church. And he's like, thank you, Daddy. And I go, hey, I just want you to know that it's not because you do that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you because why? He's like, because I'm your son. And so we've got that down, but it's important, I think, to reiterate that all the time.
I love that.
Yeah, so I feel like that's been a huge thing for me, and to pass that down the family tree, and because of a way that, and I think we're in the small children category. Ellie's what, 1?
About to be, yeah.
About to be 1,
yeah.
And Ava is
2.5.
Almost 2.5, almost 3.
Yeah.
And so I've got Austin's almost 10, Jet's 8, Titus is almost 6, and Pax is almost 4, and so. For us, we look like gods to them. We're way stronger, way smarter, have all this ability. And so that's why we're great to be proxies for God. But the whole time is to constantly train them and teach them the way that you obey me is the way that ultimately one day you'll obey God. And that's why we can't discipline with emotion. Well, that's just why it's so hard. We've had many a conversation about that. And it's hard. But because God loves us, and whatever discipline he does give us is because he loves us. And so you want to discipline in love. At the same time, always communicating this firm boundaries. Now, this is where, and for adult children, they still need this. And I think we've mentioned it, and that's why I love the fact that you were able to communicate how much you needed Robert to tell you that he loved you, he was proud of you, and you're his, with a father's blessing that kind of healed a lot of maybe the darkness of the past. And I'm sure there's probably way more healing to go, but for the most part, that's just a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I had so much I wanted to say back, but I was like, oh, I don't want to cry. So I was like, I'll just keep it simple. I just be like, thanks, I needed that. But I was like, I have so many nice things I want to say, but.
Well, say them now. What would you say?
No, I don't. I already cried once.
No, this is like the whole point of this. Is not that you cry, but that that people need to know that adult kids need blessing.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So there's an adult parent out there who may feel like they missed out an opportunity to bless their kid who's now 30 or whatever, right? Like, gosh.
Yes.
All right. So talk to me about that.
Well, no, I think, it's a unique situation with Robert and I because Robert is my father-in-law. And so I feel like in a huge way, he stepped in to fill gaps that my dad didn't. And I wanted to communicate that to him and say, just talk about all the ways that he has been intentional with me and how God has used him to heal so much hurt in me and show me what a good, intentional father that pursues his children looks like.
Right.
And so, but I was like, I was like, it's a Super Bowl today. And I'm like, I'm like in my head about it. And I'm like, just don't say anything weird. Just keep doing your dishes. And I think in a lot of ways, what's funny is I'm not somebody that like tries to play it. Like I don't know how to play it cool. And so.
You are pretty cool though.
Thanks. And so I'm like, a lot of ways adults are going to try to play it cool.
Right.
Like, no, I don't need all that emotional, mushy-gushy stuff. But deep down, all of us do.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot of letting go of this fear of not looking like you have it under control and like that you don't have it together. And I mean, I even struggle with that of like I just want to look like I am put together and like I've got something under control. But then I was literally crying last week on my Instagram stories like a lunatic. And so I'm like, well, okay, I clearly don't have it together. And so don't let that fool you. Like if you're if you're an older parent with older children, don't let their desire to look cool fool you into thinking that they don't need to hear the mush about them because we do.
I love that. Now, Pastor Mo, talk to me about youth. You've had tons of experience with students, and the teenage years can be a really challenging place to minister because there is that sort of like disconnect between parents and kids, and that's where a youth pastor is so great because they can say the same things that parents say, but actually be listened to. What do you think it is that parents of teenagers need to do to bless their children?
Man, that's good. I think, just my mind just goes to kind of, Catie, what you said about wanting to look cool or acceptable, whatever, all those kinds of things. So I don't know if parents have that problem because I feel like most parents, you'd hope, are at least like, I'm not going to look cool in front of my kid. That's fine. But if you have that as a hurdle, you got to get over it.
Yeah.
Because for me, what I've seen, because it's what I've experienced, when somebody has the authenticity to be like, I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to want what's best for you anyways, even if you don't like me or think I'm cool.
Right.
That's when the so-called magic happens. So I think for parents to don't care what your kid thinks.
Well, and I think that's what's really cool about that. A healthy parent isn't codependent on their child.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not putting the weight of you need to be all the things that I need to sort of function.
Right.
So that I think that's really good. I just want to challenge parents of teenagers, like you have real authority and they want you, even though they might say, get away from me. What they're really saying is, come put the fire out and hug me, hold me, all that.
It's a cry for help. Kids don't need cool parents. They need intentional parents.
Right. There you go. Well, hey, guys, thanks so much for listening. If you have questions, just text us in at 737-231-0605. We would love to hear from you. We talk faith, culture, and everything in between. Any other final thoughts on the blessing before we move on?
So good.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching and have an awesome week of worship.